Alrighty, how's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys all so much for chiming in for the latest show here on WardyNYM, where today I'll be breaking down everything that you guys may need to know about this latest series for the Amazons. This time back home at Citi Field in a three-game set. For the fourth time this year, they are now matching up against, yes, the Philadelphia Phillies. So again, we have a lot of breakdown, a lot of numbers to get into, how the Mets have fared leading up to this point against the Phillies, how the Phillies have looked of recent as well. Who are some players I think will stand out in this series for the Mets, and who are some players that I think will stand out this series for the Phillies. And of course, after I get through all that, folks, here in the live stream, I will then sort of answer all your comments, questions, and concerns. And again, that is exclusive for the viewers in the live stream. I'll cut things off for people on replay, assuming that you don't want to watch an extended version of the show, as we normally go an hour plus long. But today might even be longer because I will be taking live callers today, folks. So to everybody in the live stream, if you have comments that you'd like to share but would actually like to either show your face or just voice your opinions over here, I'll be giving you guys the link to the show later on after I break down everything that there is to know about this series. So that way you guys can chime in and share your thoughts outside of just commenting them. So I'm really looking forward to that plenty last year. We're going to start to do it again today and of course in the shows going forward. But guys, very excited to get into it. I'm going to do a quick roll call for people here in the live stream. Again, if you're just chiming in, make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. Help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal, and also help us get to 16K subs. Always appreciate, folks. And one more thing before we deep dive, folks, I would just like to let you know that today, the reason why we're doing the series preview today is because if there's an off day, I think that's a perfect time to actually get these previews in versus trying to cram it in a couple hours prior to the start of the series, which is tomorrow. So with the Mets having an off day today, just feels like a great time to deep dive it. That way there's more longevity for this as well, because everything's so short term with the type of content that we've been doing on the channel, basically on a day-by-day basis with how the Mets have been faring or lack thereof. But guys, I see Joey in the chat. I see Clutch, Stoney, Jason, Joe, Brian, Ocean Girl, Jocelyn, Michael. Appreciate you guys chiming in. Really do. Like I said, we got a lot to get into, so enough hesitation, guys. Let's talk about the New York Mets, shall we? Because the Mets enter this series tomorrow at the time of recording this, and we don't know for certain if that game is going to be played, and that already is a big asterisk. I hope that the Mets come out and have the game tomorrow, but there is, as of now, I believe a 60% chance or so of thunderstorms and just rain, all that bad stuff there in New York. So I don't necessarily know if we're going to have potentially delay tomorrow, if the weather's going to be perfectly fine. All I know is that the weather doesn't look promising as of now. So if there is, say, a doubleheader, pitching matchups will still probably be the same. They may change slightly, but nothing drastic. But fingers crossed that they can get the series in normal. And if not, it's not the end of the world. The Mets have fared well in doubleheaders, including winning one and then losing one last time they played the Phillies in Philly. I was in attendance for that doubleheader, as a matter of fact. But the Mets enter this series leading the NL East per usual. They are currently 29-17 on the season. They're coming off of their second series loss of the year, losing 2-3 to the Giants. That wasn't for a lack of offense, but was simply just for a lack of starting pitching that we saw because of the likes of having no Tyler McGill and no Max Scherzer in the rotation, along with, of course, Jacob deGrom, who hasn't started a game all year. And there is some promising news that he may return before the end of June, but again, still cautiously optimistic on that front. But no less, the Mets, they matched up against the Phillies already 3 series this season, and they are 6-3 against them this year. They've won every single one of those series, and they've outscored the Phillies by a good margin too, 45 runs to 32 for the Phillies. So the Mets in 9 games are averaging right around 5 runs per game against these Phillies, while the Phillies are averaging right around just over 3 runs per game. So the Mets pitching has been pretty strong so far against the Phillies, and the Mets offense has surely been there too, as it's been all season long, other than some little slumps that we saw early in May. But the offense, led by Francisco Lindor and others from the Giants series, they're going to come out and hopefully be red hot again. With this Phillies team right now, what are the Phillies doing? How have they been faring as of late? Again, appreciate everyone chiming in, folks. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you're just chiming in. Always appreciate it. But guys, the Phillies right now, they're 20-24 on the year. They are currently, I believe, 2nd or 3rd right now in the division. Them and the Braves keep going back and forth by a game. Either way, the Mets have a 7-game lead right now in the division. Yeah, I believe right now the Phillies are 8 back because they lost the last 2 to the Braves. And the Phillies haven't even wrapped up their series yet. At the time of recording this, they still have one more game in their series, a 4-game set against the Braves. So I don't know how that's going to go. You may know by now by the time that you watch this, but at the time of recording this, the Phillies are 4 games below 500, and that's definitely notable, something taking into consideration, because this is a Phillies team that, especially if they end up losing, say, the series here to the Braves, that's going to be a tough pill for them to swallow. The offense has been better for them as of late, led by Bryce Harper, no less. He might have a torn UCL, but he is still being able to hit the ball really well in the DH position. He just can't field for quite literally another month and a half at minimum, because he would really need Tommy John surgery if that fully tears his UCL for his elbow. But no less, the Phillies, again, they have been looking really, really good. And my apologies once more, folks, if my Wi-Fi has been dropping at all. I'm actually going to try to fix it real quick. I unfortunately have been having Wi-Fi issues as of late. I told you guys about that. You've been following the show. I'm going to try to see if I can combat this right now. So the Wi-Fi might drop a little bit more again, but hopefully it gets fixed up. Again, guys, normally for the large portion of the show, the visuals, all that stuff should be okay. But I do apologize again that we're having, some technical issues. I hope that you guys hear me fine at least, because the visuals will come back again very soon. So just hang tight. That's all I got to say on that front. But again, how are we looking at the series for the Phillies? Knowing that the Mets have won all 3 matchups against them so far this year, they're going to try to come out guns a-blazing. This is one of those series. Again, the Mets, another matchup in Citi Field against the Phillies, where they have a Sunday night baseball game. Yes, every game in this series will be right around 7 p.m. Eastern time. And it starts off with, as long as there's no, say, postponement because of potential bad weather, it's going to be Carlos Carrasco versus Mr. Zach Eflin for, yes, the Philadelphia Phillies. Cookie, entering this game, has yet to face the Phillies this year. He's like one of the lone starters for the Mets that hasn't faced the Phillies yet. However, Cookie in his last start, which was against the Rockies, pitched 5 really strong innings, 5.1 to be exact, gave up 7 hits, but only 1 earned run against those Rockies in Colorado, which was really impressive. And then we have, of course, him on the year, a 4-1 win-loss record with a 3.50 ERA. And the rotation is going to be really key for the Mets in this one, guys, because especially after having their worst series of the year when it comes to a pitching standpoint with this rotation, it's that much more pivotal that they try to get off to the right foot here against these Phillies, who are, of course, going to be pesky. And while the Mets have had their numbers so far this year, it doesn't change the fact that this is very early in the year. Anything can change, and the Phillies can most certainly provide offense at any given moment. They have such a deep lineup. Big swing and miss, but don't get me wrong, it's very deep. Versus Zach Eflin here. Eflin is 1-3 on the year with a 3.65 ERA, and Eflin has given up a total of 6 runs, 5 earned, in only 4.1 innings against the Mets in 1 start this year. So the Mets thus far have had the upper hand on Eflin. I do believe that was when Eflin had his start in Citi Field, no less. So hopefully we see the same similar results. But then we get into game 2, folks, and this is, again, the game of the series, in my opinion, because it's Zach Wheeler returning to Citi Field. He's had some really strong starts against the Mets in Citi Field already. A long-time New York Met. We all know the story with Zach. Should have kept him, but that was a year prior. It's before Steve Cohen already bought the Mets. So because of that reason, the Wilpons, they let him walk. He goes to Philly, and he's been a stud. And Wheeler so far this year has been a little up and down, but he's 3-3 with a 3.38 ERA. And he only gave up 1 earned run in 4.2 innings against the Mets. The Mets' first matchup against the Phillies this year, back in the beginning of the season in early April. But he's matching up against Taijuan Walker, and this is going to be a tall task for Ty. Not necessarily because of what Ty's done so far this season, but rather the lineup that he's facing. Some guys have some really good numbers against Taijuan Walker in this series, but Ty is currently 2-0 on the year with a 2.70 ERA. But against the Phillies, again, in 3 games, because he's pitched against the Phillies in 3 games. 1 was, of course, only 1 inning, 1 or 2. Then he left with injury that we saw in the beginning of the season. Then, of course, he pitched 4 or 5 strong at Citi Field. Then he got really rocked in his last outing, where he gave up 7 runs total, 6 earned against the Phillies. So he has a 4.91 ERA in 3 games against Philly so far this year. We'll see if that is going to get better or get worse, but that's a huge pitching matchup for the Mets and potentially the game that could decide the series winner here. So Wheeler, while he may have had better numbers against the Mets thus far, we need Ty to step up, and hopefully he can do just that. But then we get in the series finale, folks, and this is big as well. You got Chris Bassett, who's trying to bounce back. The reason why I have the little, star next to him is because we don't know for certain if Bassett is going to pitch yet. He would be doing it on 1 day's rest shorter, I believe. I believe it would be 4 days rest for him. But no less, Bassett, he's been dealing with a little bit of cold as of late, so Buck hasn't fully committed to him yet. It seems like he's going to get the start. David Pearson would most likely be the starter should it not be Bassett, and that's perfectly fine too. Pearson has done well against the Phillies so far this year, but I'm going to go on a limb and say that Bassett was more than likely going to start this series finale unless proven otherwise, and he's matching up against Kyle Gibson, but Bassett, 4-2 on the year with 3.91 ERA. His ERA jumped a boatload. Not that it means much, but when you give up 8 earned in your last start against the Giants, yeah, that's an issue. 5.2 innings pitched, however, against the Phillies. I was in attendance for that game. That was a doubleheader in Philly, which he only gave up 1 earned run. So hopefully we see similar results from Seabass, trying to bounce back after a rough outing. Hasn't looked great in his last couple outings, but hopefully, again, we see better results here. Kyle Gibson, someone who has had the Mets number really since the Phillies have acquired him last year at the trade deadline from the Texas Rangers. Gibson is 3-2 on the year with 3.94 ERA, but against the Mets so far this year, he's only has a 1.74 ERA in 2 games. So Kyle Gibson has been pitching pretty well against the Mets really since he's arrived in Philly over the past year. And hopefully that doesn't continue, but again, it's going to be a tough pitching matchup regardless on how his ERA and those baseline numbers look at this point in time. So in a nutshell, guys, this is a huge pitching matchup for the Mets. We know that, especially after giving up the amount of runs that they did this past series, which was an absolute boatload. They scored a bunch, but they also gave up a bunch, and that's definitely not a great thing. If you do the number, look, the Mets gave up 9 in Game 3 against the Giants. In Game 2, they gave up 13. Then they gave up 3 in the first. So do the math. That's a lot of runs in a 3-game span, and that needs to come down for a Mets team that has provided the offense. They just need the pitching to balance things out for the time being, at least until Tyler McGill is back, which should hopefully be in sometime in early June, and then eventually Scherzer, DeGrom, should they not make any acquisitions prior to help combat the rotation with the lack of depth that they've had as of late. But guys, let's get into now the offensive contributions. What stands out? And again, everybody, appreciate you all chiming in. Continue smashing that like and subscribe on, folks. Really does appreciate. I really do appreciate. Help us get 100 likes for your first short-term goal, and help us get to 16K subs for the next short-term goal here at WardyNYM. Thank you all so much in advance. But guys, let's get into the offense. And I know I've been sounding repetitive, but it holds true. Pete Alonso, the third straight series preview that I have him in as a key guy to watch. And you always have to watch Pete, but the numbers just continue to benefit him, where I couldn't justify having him not in here. Even though Alonso struck out a boatload the past couple of games, and the games 2 and 3 against the Giants, especially with that slider down the way, he's still been hitting the ball so well this season, and especially against the Phillies. 4 home runs, 13 RBIs, a 314 average, and over 1,000 OPS against the Phillies, and not a large sample size, only 9 games and 40 plate appearances. So that's really impressive over a RBI per game pace against the Phillies so far this year. And he also has himself in night games, which is important because the Mets, all 3 games of this series are at night. He has a total of 5 home runs, 20 RBIs, 14 runs scored, a 296 average, 876 OPS in 23 games at night this year. So based on those numbers, what we've seen at this point, this is just further reasoning as to why Alonso should bowl out. But I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if Alonso does struggle against these starters for the Phillies, because they've had an upper hand on him. The only starter out of the 3 in this matchup to this point that Alonso has fared well against isn't Zach Eflin, and isn't that in Kyle Gibson, but rather, yes, his former teammate in Zach Wheeler. Wheeler right now, in 21 plate appearances career-wise for Alonso, he has a 389 average and a 920 OPS. So if there's one starter that does stick out that could benefit Alonso here, it is actually Zach Wheeler, believe it or not. Outside of that, it's the bullpen, of course, for the Phillies, that has had their fair share of struggles, and that's something I fully expect the Mets to try their best to execute on should they have some early struggles against these starters. The Phillies rotation has been far better than what people are giving credit of. They currently, per Fangraphs, and I'll be breaking that down in a little bit, but they have the 3rd best rotation starter-wise in all baseball right now for Fangraphs. So definitely a surprise, but they've been consistent. Their bullpen, however, has been that massive issue. But then we get outside of Alonso. Now let's talk about Brandon Nimmo, okay? The reason why I have Nimmo is not just because of him being Mr. Consistent, always getting on base, but Nimmo, like Alonso, has fared really well against these Phillies this season. 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, a 333 average, and 979 OPS against the Phillies in only 9 games of 42 plate appearances, guys. And this is talking about a Brandon Nimmo who, again, at night, like Alonso, is doing really well. 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, 18 runs scored, a 330 average, 891 OPS, and only 22 games, night games this season. That's definitely important. Has solid numbers at Citi Field as well. And then, of course, some pitchers that stand out against Brandon Nimmo isn't Zach Eflin, but it is Wheeler and Gibson. Wheeler, in 27 plate appearances for Nimmo, has 1 home run, a 296 average, and a just shy of 800 OPS. Kyle Gibson, in only 15 plate appearances, smaller sample size, 1 home run, 2 RBIs, a .308 average, and over 1,000 OPS. So based on those starters numbers, that's definitely promising. Nimmo, again, he's been electrifying. The Mets would be nowhere where they are right now if it wasn't for the likes of someone like Brandon Nimmo, and that's absolutely fantastic to see. So Nimmo, hopefully he has a great series. He's been so consistent. He's been the Mets' best hitter against lefties too this year, lefty on lefty no less. The Mets won't see a lefty starter in this series, but they may see a lefty out of the pen or two, and that is where Nimmo again can continue to add damage along with just being so pesky. This guy hits for opposite field like crazy. He gets on base at a ridiculous clip. He has like a career basically right around close to 400 on base percentage. One of the best in baseball for a reason. One of the best leadoff hitters out there by far. Now, guys, my number 3 guy to watch, and I really was debating with Jeff McNeil, but I don't know exactly how much playing time Jeff is going to have in this series as of now, just because he has that day-to-day injury with his leg contusion from hitting hard in the wall with the amazing catch against the Giants yesterday at the time of recording this. Even with McNeil hopefully playing the full series and not 2 or 3, I still have Starling Marte here because Marte, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, a .278 average, a .733 OPS against the Phillies this year, and a total of 9 games and 38 plate appearances. But Marte has always killed the Phillies throughout his career, has probably some of, if not the best numbers among all Mets hitters against the Phillies in his career. But especially looking at home and Citi Field, Marte has thrived. 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 9 runs scored, a .297 average, a .803 OPS, and 15 games at Citi Field this season. That's definitely promising for Marte. And pitching-wise, he definitely likes to go up against Zach Eflin. In 13 play appearances, has 1 home run, a .539 average, and a 1,693 OPS. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Kyle Gibson as well, only 8 plate appearances, a .429 average, over 1,000 OPS. So Zach Wheeler, he hasn't had the upper hand on, but he has had the upper hand on both Gibson and Eflin to this point in his career. But that's really all you need to know from the Mets, at least. There are, of course, plenty of everyone in this lineup can thrive, and I say that always. Look, the Mets have one of the best offenses in baseball. I believe right now that they are 3rd in baseball in runs scored. Their offense has been electric, especially over the past couple of days, really throughout that road trip that they had in Colorado and then San Francisco. But they've been clicking. They just are such a pesky team. They're so much fun to watch, and that's why they have a healthy lead there in first, the largest divisional lead in all baseball right now. But guys, going back now, the Mets, J.D. Davis, Dom Smith, 2 guys that have really good numbers, not just against the Phillies, but against these certain pitching matchups. But because we have no clue how Buck is going to utilize either 2, J.D. might only get 1 game, Dom might get no game. Like, we don't know for certain because of the lack of certainty that we have. The same way that I picked Luis Yorme for my 1 of 3 guys because he's been red hot for my last series preview, and he only started 1 game out of the 3 against the Giants. Because of these inconsistencies and not knowing for certain how much playing time these guys are going to get, that's why I don't have them further considered to be in my top 3 of guys to watch. But of course, Dom, JD, they've had big moments against the Phillies, not just throughout their career, but this season in particular. So keep an eye on them depending on who's going to be in that DH spot, right? But getting on to the Phillies now, folks. Let's talk about the Phillies because the Phillies, again, we'll see how they do tonight at the time of recording this in their final game against the Braves in that series. But the Phillies, their offense has been red hot, and it starts. Let's talk about the guy that's been killing the Mets literally feels like his entire career, and Kyle Schwarber. And yes, you would think that Kyle Schwarber just faced the Mets in the Giants series, but no, that was Jock Peterson, guys. I know that they seem similar. They're both corner outfield lefty power bats that aren't great defensively and are absolutely raking against the Mets. But no, Kyle Schwarber, after the Mets felt like they faced him and Jock Peterson, they faced Kyle Schwarber, unfortunately. And Schwarbo, who's always done phenomenal against the Mets, but specifically this season again, has still been damn good. In 9 games and 37 play appearances against the Mets, he has 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, a .250 average, and a .914 OPS. But what stands out the most isn't just those numbers against the Mets, but specifically at Citi Field. That's where he's gotten the bulk of his offensive production by far. And only 3 games of that last series the Mets played Philly in Citi Field and 11 play appearances, 3 home runs, 5 RBIs, a .500 average, and over 2,000 OPS. This guy murdered the Mets that series, and thankfully the Mets still won 2 of 3. However, though, 2 of those 3 home runs in that series, if I'm not mistaken, was off of Max Scherzer. Now, Mad Max is not available. He's out with injury right now. And while I would love Mad Max to match up against him right now, maybe that may benefit the Mets, at least in the Schwarber aspect. However, before I go too far, Kyle Schwarber simply owns not just the Mets, but Taijuan Walker. If you guys don't remember what Schwarber did against Walker last year, and what he's done against him already this year, in total, 21 play appearances against Ty, has 2 home runs. Pardon me, I'm looking at the wrong numbers here. Walker in 17 play appearances against Taijuan Walker, 5 home runs, 7 RBIs, a 400 average, and a just shy of 2,000 OPS. So all I got to say is, Ty, you better not be throwing fastball meatballs right down the pipe, because Schwarber's going to take that bad boy 500 feet. Let's try to pitch around these guys, or at least know how to go down and away and not have a Jock Pearson 2.0 situation for his second consecutive series. But again, Schwarber, absolute murder of baseballs against the Mets. He's 3 for 6, batting 500 in a small play appearance sample size against Bassett. Doesn't have good numbers against Cookie Carrasco in his career, so that's a plus. We'll see if that holds true or not. But not just Schwarber. We also got to talk about guys. Yes, Bryce Harper. Bryce, who has been at an MVP level again this year. Someone who can only DH. Thankfully for the Phillies, they have a universal DH now, because without that, Harper wouldn't be playing, and he has been that huge X factor for their offense. He murdered the Dodgers in LA a couple weeks ago. Didn't do as great in the most recent series against the Dodgers, but again, Harper has been killing it all year long. One of the best hitters in baseball. Wouldn't be surprised if he's an MVP finalist once again this year. And looking at Harper's numbers against the Mets as well. 9 games, 38 play appearances against the Mets so far this year. 4 home runs, and I'm pretty sure 2 of those were off of Max Scherzer as well. So take that as you will, at least 2. 6 RBIs, a 206 average, but hey, that average doesn't mean much. And guys, it looks like my Wi-Fi is about to drop again. I apologize. It'll only be like that for a minute or two, then it'll come back. So my apologies once more for the lack of visuals for a minute or so. But at 878 OPS, this guy almost has a 600 slug against the Mets so far this year, which means that while he hasn't necessarily been high average, when he is making contact, that ball is going boom. The stereotype that is the Phillies this season. And yeah, that's definitely not fun. We all know the case with Harper. He's always been a murderer of baseballs against the Mets, not just during his time with the Phillies, but of course prior to that with the Nationals. But not just looking at Harper, who again, against Taijuan Walker, similar to Schwarber, has really good numbers. 21 play appearances, 2 home runs, a 250 average, but a 936 OPS. And of course, he has a total of 7 home runs, 24 RBIs, and 20 runs scored in only 26 games at night this year. So again, a full series where every game is around 7:10 or so p.m. Eastern time. That's going to benefit Harper even more versus if, say, it was a day game, at least for the series finale. But you got Harper, you got Schwarber, guys. And the final guy that I think we need to watch, even though that, yes, you have to be aware of Nick Castellanos. You need to be aware of JT Realmuto, even with his early struggles this year. There's plenty of weapons in Alec Boehm, who's been one of the best hitters for the Phillies all year long. Not known for his defense, but definitely known for his hitting, otherwise known as the Phillies way. But yes, Gene Segura. My goodness gracious, this guy has been killing the Mets this year as well. Has done really well against the Mets since he's arrived in Philly a couple years ago. 8 games played against the Mets this year, 31 play appearances, 1 home run, 2 RBIs, a 357 average, and an 884 OPS against the Mets this year. Against Cookie Carrasco in his career, 16 play appearances, 3 home runs, a 438 average, and a 1,500 OPS. Taijuan Walker, 14 play appearances, 1 home run, a 357 average, and a 928 OPS. And Chris Bassett, 3 play appearances and 1 home run. So really, Segura has probably one of, if not the best numbers among all Phillies hitters against the 3 starters that the Mets have scheduled as of now to face the Phillies in this 3-game set. So Segura, who of course has a strong glove, strong base running ability, can hit for opposite field, is just really a solid player for the Phillies, and has been throughout his entire career, just a hitting machine, and he's been red hot, and we'll see if that transfers over or not in this 3-game set against the Mets. But guys, I think that's really what you need to know from the Mets and the Phillies perspectives. Yes, both these teams can hit the ball far, and yes, I fully expect there to be a lot of home runs probably in the series finale. Sunday night baseball game on ESPN, they're juicing the baseballs, they're taking away the den ball, they do it for viewership, can't tell me otherwise. Just like how we saw the amount of balls that were flying out last time the Mets faced the Phillies on ESPN, we're probably going to see again the same thing here, but again, we'll find out. But Mets offensively this year, overall rankings per Fangraphs, they have the second best offense in baseball, folks. They moved up 4 spots, 3 or 4, because I believe they were 6 last time that we did our series preview, which of course was for the Giants series. Phillies, however, while they've had great offense, they also are huge swing and miss, and that's why they're right in the middle of the pack this year offensively per Fangraphs at 15th overall. Starting pitching, this is where things start to change up a lot, guys. The Mets are 11th among starters in baseball. They were 5th prior to the Giants series. So it just shows you when you give up a total of what? 17 runs from your starters in those games 2 and 3, the past couple for the Mets, yeah, you're going to drop naturally. So the Mets have the 11th ranked starting rotation in baseball, while the Phillies are the 3rd best in baseball, surprisingly. Yes, that's a fact. Bullpen rankings, the Mets are 13th, while the Phillies are 15th, so they're a little close there, but I definitely like the Mets bullpen odds far more than I do the Phillies. Phillies, again, have had implosions, not just with the bullpen, but with their defense. Their defense has been a massive struggle. Yesterday, for example, JT Realmuto threw to try to get a guy out at second against the Braves, and it went past whoever was covering second baseman for the Phillies. It went past the cutoff man behind him, and it even went past that being in Odubel Herrera in the outfield, and then it led to a run scored. I mean, the Phillies defense has just been abysmal. It feels like every single series they have at least one massive hiccup that ends up being potentially a game-deciding play, or at least close to. So the Mets need to make sure that they can take advantage of the piss-poor defense that is the Philadelphia Phillies, a Phillies team that will not have Harper in their outfield, and just need, again, to, one, make sure that they continue to execute with their offense, continue to hopefully get 5+ runs on average a game that they've had against the Phillies so far this year, jump on those starters, jump on the bullpen, but most importantly, have solidified starting pitching. This is another massive test for the Mets. If they go into this 3-game set and they absolutely implode from a pitching perspective, that is going to further reaffirm that the Mets need to make a move, and rather not necessarily quickly, but sooner than later. I know that they don't want to. I know that they don't want to show desperation sense of things, because you're never going to win a trade in that sense. But at the end of the day, this is a huge series for the Mets, because this is a big matchup, 4th time against the Phillies. Then you have the Nationals, which should be easy go with things. But then you have that massive trip and that massive stretch in June, which will be anything but an easy task. So this is a Phillies team that's beatable. The Mets have proven that they're beatable in the first 3 series. There should be no stopping now against this team in Philly. So Mets fans, let me know what you think in the comments below, folks. For people in the live stream, I'm going to start answering all your comments, questions, and concerns now. I'm also going to be starting to take live callers in a little bit here in the show. And again, for people on replay, if you're wondering why I'm not showing me doing these live callers with you guys, because I'm going to cut things off, if you would like to see that, let me know in the comments below if you would like me to extend the show further, not crop it as short as I do for each of these. Overall, if you would like to see these things, but no less, people on replay, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about this Mets-Phillies matchup? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to win this series overall? What are the odds for the Mets? What are the odds for the Phillies? And what players stand out the most for you? What is the biggest X factor for the Mets, in your opinion, that will make or break this 3-game set? Please make sure to let me know. For people in the live stream, I'll start answering all your comments, questions, and concerns now. But again, for people on replay, this is where I'll be cutting things off.